Welcome, everybody, to AIOps Evolution Weekly. I'm your host, Sean McDermott. And Bill, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Sean. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, So we're going to do something a little bit different today because normally we're very specific on AIOps. And I thought this week we might be able to do something a little bit different and start looking at different subjects in the AI world that are topical today, and see if there's lessons learned or similarities between what's going on in AI ops world. So I was talking to our producer, and she brought up this whole thing of the shipping crisis going on and all the logistics issues. And I was like, yeah, I just saw this whole thing on 60 Minutes the other day about that. And so it's fascinating what's going on and just how much of a problem it is, and it's actually getting worse, not going away. And so after that, we started talking about, AI in shipping and worldwide logistics. And that kind of led us to a couple articles on how AI can help in shipping. And then as I started reading those, I started thinking, well, wait a minute, this is actually very synergistic to what's going on in AI ops. And there's probably a big role that IT can play in this. So did you get a chance to read some of those articles I sent over to you?
Yeah, I sure did. I look forward to, I like reading about the high seas and getting offshore and all these kind of real world problems. So look forward to the conversation. Get out of our home.
Yeah, you think of high seas and you're thinking of like swashbucklers and hanging off the side like
I'm ready to join
Michael Bolton or something like that. Yeah. But it doesn't seem to look like that in real life. It looks like a awfully boring job.
My daughter just did a Peter Pan like pirates high seas play. It was the high school play. So it's top of mind for me. Just getting out there. So
yeah. All right. So I came up with two articles. One we're just going to rip through like very, very quickly. One is called 5 Ways AI Can Help Mitigate the Global Shipping Crisis, written by Amr Inman for TechCrunch, contributor for TechCrunch. And there's two interesting things around this article. One is that it says 5 ways, but it only shows 3. So might want to work on your counting there. But the kind of big thing here was it's all about data, right? And it was really talking about the need for data to help to basically do this and instrumenting things. And they talk about IoT and working with third-party vendors and things like that to grab data, which is what we've been talking about in the AIOps world since we started this broadcast, is that you got to have access to the data. If you don't have access to the data, there's really nothing to machine learn or AI about. So that was it. Just do you have any comments on that article?
Yeah, I mean, the 3 ways that they highlighted. One was, and it was really written to enterprises, to companies that are shipping products, and that have warehouses, inventories, or maybe they are drop shipping. But the one is you got to plan and identify your inventories. You need to know where your bits are going, your products are going, your shipping. I liked they brought up to sharing data securely with third parties or your partners, and that gets into maybe the bigger ecosystem. You can't just view your own environment. You got to kind of understand your shipping partners or warehousing partners, or even if you can get third-party data on weather and whatnot. And I know some of the biggest retailers already are doing that and have command centers. And then the last one is simulation, which the next article talks about that as well. But I think last week we talked about Google and Microsoft having supply chain twinning kind of system so that you can simulate your environment and do some role playing and do some kind of scenario, war games almost of your environments. And I think, we're in a war right now when it comes to the supply chain and the shipping industry right now. It's a kind of a wartime scenario going on in real time right now.
Yeah, it's very dramatic, and I'm very interested to see what happens at Christmas time, right? Because this is the largest buying time of the year, right? And most retailers even go into IT lockdown right about now, and we have some customers that are doing that. And so if they don't have enough product and inventory and things like that, and I really do encourage people to watch the 60 Minutes special, or no, it wasn't a special, it's just a story on 60 Minutes last week, and if you can find it online. But it was really, really interesting to kind of break down all the different parts. So let's move on to this other article. And this is article is around, IT, AI and high seas, written by Dolan Adams. Sorry, Dolan, if I butchered your name. I tend to do that a lot. He wrote for Innovation and through Tech Republic. And this is a really interesting article, and this is what really got me thinking, like, what is IT's role, right, in trying to solve this problem, right? And can IT, can AI save Christmas?
Yeah, right.
what I'm kind of, the first thing that kind of went through my mind on this, and maybe right now it's kind of hard, right,
Yeah.
because we're literally into the Christmas season. I was over Home Depot earlier, and they got all their Christmas stuff out. Yep. But so it might be a little too late for now, but I think that IT plays a major role in the solution of this going forward, because it's got to come back to normal in some way. Like one of the things on 60 Minutes they talked about is shipping costs are 10 times more than what they were pre-pandemic. Like the months leading up to the pandemic, $3,000 to ship a container, now it's $30,000, and the shipping companies are making record profits. But they're the gridlock it's almost like a circular gridlock. So I think AI can play a huge role in this, but there's going to be a lot of constraints, I think, and there's going to be the need for AI to be, I think, part of the solution,
right,
and the IT organization to be part of the solution. So did you get a chance to read this article?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was fascinating. It kind of focused on the shipping industry, but so much around there. It really went in depth. I guess just generally sort of what caused this problem. Is it a supply problem or a demand problem? It was Goolsbee, Alan Goolsbee, I think his name is. He was in the Obama administration, economic advisor professor now, and he was on NPR a few weeks ago, just like, we see it on 60 Minutes talking about this. And he really said that the demand for product, things that have to be shipped from Amazon and other things has spiked incredibly during COVID times, because we have such less, we can't spend our money on services, going out to eat and movies and entertainment. So there's all this money for product, and that's a real spike, and it's even worse this time of year. So I don't think this is going away at Christmas, but maybe all of the pressure on relieving the supply side of it, which was also impacted, can kind of catch up as sort of we come off the Christmas holidays, or I guess just the general holidays in the beginning of the year, and that demand starts to go down, and we have more demand for services. So, this is really a demand problem, generated problem, but it's sort of not meeting the supply side. And I think that's, there's parallels to IT, right? Which we probably don't want to get in too much of. This is the same kind of problems you have with IT. We work with telecom companies during the Super Bowl and during these big events. There's so much demand on network traffic. You got to be able to accommodate and bring up your cloud resources to be able to support that. But I guess the biggest takeaway, without getting into yet maybe all of the specific moving parts, is I think this represents really the best way, a great example of how IT operations has to get directly plugged into the service strategy of IT. So these ships moving, the ports, the sensors that are on the ports, the people working, the conditions, of those, the docks, the security of it, all of that is part of your IT service strategy, and so we talk about IT AIOps. Is the thing up or down? Is it performing well? Well, it's also important that the data is right, and that needs to be taken into account in AIOps as well. And so you want your AIOps strategy to look at, is everything that's in my service mapping and the service strategy that you might be managing in your service catalog or your CMDB, is the shipping industry, your own business processes, represented in there? And is your AIOps looking for solutions as to how to break up these bottlenecks, or to make sure that the data is being provided so that the humans involved, or maybe the AI downstream, has that information to make those decisions? So I think that tightness of IT ops and the business, this is just a great example of how this all needs to work together, and AIOps needs to become really part of the solution.
Yeah, I think that there's two parts of this that really kind of fold back into what we've talked about over the past few weeks, right? So let's take up one topic, build versus buy, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at it and you say, let's go buy a product that has AI and machine learning into it to solve some of our AI ops problems, like an event management platform, or monitoring platform, observability, right? They call it now. And let's build it. Let's go buy an AI machine learning based observability platform to kind of solve the issue of consuming lots of events for root correlation and analysis of outages and things like that, versus build, right? And if you looked at it and said, well, wait a minute, if we look at a broader strategy of IT, not just the single use case, it may lead you to start thinking bigger in the context of maybe we should be building our own in order to widen the flexibility of the platform for different use cases and build up this expertise of doing that, because it is core. It could be core to the business, not just core to the IT organization. And then I started thinking about, okay, if you're an organization out there, you're a multi-billion-dollar company that's relying on product coming in, whether it's raw materials or products from China or around the world, and you're trying to sell them. Let's say you're Walmart or something like that, or let's say you're like the furniture business, right? I know that the furniture business has been struggling to keep up because certain raw materials like foam hasn't been available.
Yeah.
And they can't finish the couch is complete, except they don't have cushions because they don't have foam. But so if you're a big organization and you're saying, hey, we need to start understanding supply chain dynamics and doing simulation, everything this kind of article talks about, and we need more AI to do that, then I think there's an opportunity. One, I think this is what you're saying, IT to be part of that solution, right? And be part of that business to say, how can we help you? I think there's a role for IT to help in data collection and working with third-party organizations to bring in different data sources. But I think there's also an opportunity for the IT organization to say, hey, look, we're already doing some AI internally around AIOps. We've got this expertise in-house. We've been building this platform. We'll extend this platform out to the businesses, sort of like an AI as a service, so that these business units can really focus on identifying the data, building the models, and making decisions based on the analysis of that data, rather than building up their own infrastructure and things like that. And then you've got an infrastructure problem. How do you deliver more infrastructure out to these business units that are spinning up these AI teams because they have to, in order to start doing this predictability and tracking and logistics? And how does IT's environment potentially couldn't get much bigger because of these business units saying, hey, we need to deploy more AI. We need to get in front of this data. We've got data scientists that need these platforms in order to do their job. So now IT has a bigger capability to deliver, but they're not getting any more staff, right? Because IT is just not growing. And that's kind of where, I think, IT leaders can start thinking about their AI ops strategy becoming much bigger than just, a single use case. Yeah. And once you start thinking that way, then your decisions on how you're going to invest in AI today, whether it's buy versus build, start getting very different too. Yeah. So all this kind of comes back to how involved is IT in the business, right? And how are they delivering capabilities to the business to make the business run better? Mm-hmm. What role do they play? And how can they bring their expertise to really deliver higher value service? And I think this is really key in making IT part of, the differentiator of the business itself, because we all know, right? The businesses that have more data and can leverage that data for decision-making faster will probably be the winners.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And all that means is that there's more opportunity and pressure on the IT organizations to start thinking about AI and machine learning in a much bigger context than just a simple use case that they're trying to figure out today around, correlation of events and outages.
Yeah. I was just a Christmas analogy. There's a lot to unpack there, right? So I won't unpack all of that. We'll keep it in the package till the holidays. But I think the one thing I will say is autonomous shipping was brought up, right? That their ships are just not going to be staffed. They're just going to be out there autonomous. It's going to be a big floating computer that's really a million little computers with all different containers that are computers and sensors that are out there. And so it's really, you say IT is not growing. Well, the traditional IT is not growing of routers and switches maybe, but but IT is growing because that's becoming now IT. That's an IT thing that's out there floating around and taking your packages somewhere. And so seafarers are really going to become the SMEs, the AI SMEs in IT that are going to become experts on that domain, right? Or at least the educated, intelligent ones that can do that. And so I do think that, my big takeaway is that AI, as I kind of said before, is I think if you're going to focus on AI ops, don't start by looking too much at the algorithms and all the technology of IT. Start with the business. Start with the business problems that need to be solved that your CIO, CTOs sitting and to the board care about. And then how does that play back into the IT environment? And how is those business problems really an IT problem? And I think your AI op, what you'll find is that the problems and algorithms needed to solve those problems are very much the same ones needed to solve your internal IT problems. And it's really one big continuum of a problem that the same kind of algorithms, the same kind of data is needed for all of it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of these businesses are going to need help in identifying data sources, working with IT to create integrations and pipes essentially to bring this data in, which is not trivial, right? People think, oh, we just have an integration from this system to another system, and I could spend all day talking about why that is not that trivial. And then being able to provide the infrastructure for these data scientists to actually start building these models. But I think you bring up a pretty good point around these self-sailing ships, right? It's not too different than self-driving trucks, right? And in that there's definitely, and it was interesting because this article spent a fair amount of time on self-driving ships, not only from a technology, but also from a seafarer, right, sailor perspective, which was interesting. And how, just how antiquated these ships are, right? Where they literally talked about, in some cases, there's workers going down on ropes, right, to try and figure out how deep the ship is, right, to see what the displacement is, which is kind of crazy, but that's what they're doing. Or they're going onto these ships and they've got routers on there from Best Buy, right? So I think that there's really two paths here for IT in this kind of autonomous shipping world. One is going to be more long-term, and I think that they're going to have to be part of this conversation, and they can plan it out better and they can fund it, because when a company says, hey, we're going to start shifting to autonomous shipping, that's not a very quick thing. There's a lot of engineering that goes on to that. IT has to be part of how they're going to put sensors on their ships and how they're going to maintain. How are you going to have connectivity across the ocean through satellites? I mean, I did a lot of work for the Navy back in the day, and we used to build stuff on the ship. So there's a lot of limitations of communication of ships when they're out in the middle of the ocean. Those, I think, are going to be really good opportunities for IT to extend themselves into that arena. But I think it's a longer play. They're going to be pulled in no matter what. And I think there's going to be a fair amount of funding given to IT as part of that process. Then I think there's this other route to what we're talking about today, and that's the immediacy of what's going on in the world at this moment, and how can IT react very, very quickly to that. And I think that's what we're seeing right now is the only way to really solve this logjam. And the logjam is not just the demand may have created a logjam, But the logjam is, almost circular, right? It's not just the fact that there's too many ships coming into the port. There's not enough space on the ports, for the containers. They can only allow certain containers to come into the port. So if you're trying to bring back an empty container, then there may not be room for that empty container, so they can't offload a full container onto your truck. And in order to transfer the trailer, it has to run on a chassis, but all these empty trailers are sitting on chassis in storage, so there's no chassis to transport. So this is complete circular gridlock, and everything is dependent on each other. And how do you relieve that, right? And it's a logistical nightmare.
Yep.
And I think now is the time for IT to really kind of step up and say, hey, this is how we can help. We can start delivering infrastructure to you. We can start delivering some of our expertise. We can start delivering capabilities that these data scientists now can start understanding how to really start analyzing this data. Because in the end, I think that's how this problem is going to get solved.
Yep.
Is you're just going to have to analyze data and figure out, okay, what are the options for us moving things around and moving things off the chessboard,
Yep.
right? It's almost like a parking lot where the parking lot's already full and people are trying to pull in, but you can't pull in because somebody's blocked the entrance and the people can't get out because you've already blocked the entrance. So at some point, somebody's got to move, right? And if you can only move one little piece, then it may open up another until you now start having a much broader kind of flow. Yeah. But I think it's going to take data to get there, and I think IT can play a huge role in that. Yep. And I think this problem's we have a crisis now, but I think we have a long-term opportunity for IT to participate in this and really kind of become a big part of the leading and the solution for leveraging AIOps into these different areas.
Yeah, the last point I'll add is I think the longer term is I think the more companies and institutions and ports and shipping companies, this is going to drive more openness of data and models and APIs. And I think that who you're going to want to work with are those that you can start to share your data, because it's a multi-party problem. And those that are going to play into that ecosystem and really expose their information so those models can be built more intelligently across the whole system, they're going to be the winners. This isn't going to be solved just by individual organizations. Yeah,
I think that's an excellent point. And again, data is king, right? Mm-hmm. We're seeing that in every industry, right? Is ultimately data is the most valuable thing. And the companies that can collect the right amount of data, share the right amount of data, and if you can build an ecosystem of partners that you're all sharing information, and that information is accurate and real time, and you can then start utilizing things like, what we talked about the other day, right? The digital twins and things like that. Those are going to be the winners, right? If you're not getting on board with being able to integrate data and share data, then I think your company is probably not going to be around for the long haul.
That's right.
And that's another opportunity for IT. And this is, when the pandemic started a long time ago, I was being interviewed fairly often. And, a lot of it was, hey, what's the role of IT? And I'm like, the pandemic was probably the best thing that happened for IT workers. Because everything now, what we're seeing is everything has to go through a digital transformation. Mm-hmm. And who's leading digital transformation? It's going to be led by IT, right? And so IT has a huge opportunity here to be, it will be the solution. It's just a matter who are the IT companies, who are the IT leaders that are going to step up and take on that challenge.
Yep, completely agree.
Cool. That was kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, it sure was.
Should do these topics more often. I hope everybody found this interesting as much as we did. So I want to thank our sponsor, Windward Consulting Group. So Windward is the global leader in AIOps, and you can find Windward at www.windward.com and check out what they've got going on. They've got a lot of thought leadership going on around AIOps, and you can also download from them their AIOps investment plan. So that's kind of a quick start to help you start understanding what's going on in your AIOps strategy and how you can start building that. So a big shout out to them. So I want to thank everybody for signing on this today and watching the episode. And we're actually going to take next week off. It's Thanksgiving. So we get a holiday, you guys get a holiday, and we will see you back the week after Thanksgiving. So
great.
Take care, everybody. And thanks for tuning in.
Great. See you then.